Hi guys, in this video I'll be recapping part 4 of the Happily Ever After Tell-All, which will cover the wrap-up of day 3 at the mansion, as well as Shaun's final interview with the Florida Collective. If you haven't yet, please check out my previous video where I covered part 3 of the Tell-All. You can find a link to that video up above, as well as in the playlist for season 9 of Happily Ever After. If you're interested in recaps of reality shows like 90 Day Fiancé and Love is Blind, please like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my other videos and playlists. We pick up where we left off, with Jasmine and Matt arguing outside the mansion, and Gino had just walked out to join them. After asking Gino what he wants, Jasmine tells him, "See, I'm not happy. Does that make you happy? I'm going through hell." Gino asks why she's crying, and she says no one cares how she feels. Matt's like, "Oh Lord." Gino asks what they were talking about, and she says she doesn't want to marry anyone again, and doesn't know if Matt wants to marry her because he loves her or because of his mom and his Romanian community, which she says in a pretty disrespectful way. She tells Gino to go back to the house, that it's cold. He says it's not that cold, and she starts giggling and flirting with him about how cold it was in Michigan, and he seems coyly receptive to the attention. Matt asks why they're getting along now, all of a sudden. He asks Gino if he wants sharing visitation, and says they could share Jasmine, and she yells at him. They get in a car and leave, and Gino calls him trash as they drive away. Now it's day 4, and the last day of the tell-all as the couples head to the studio. Backstage, Jovi tells Matt he heard Jasmine crying last night, and asks what was going on. Matt says he's not sure himself. He explains how they were arguing, and Gino showed up and how he's usually yelling that Jasmine's cheating. But this time Gino was like, "So why are you sad?" I'm not doing it well, but Matt does a perfect impression of Gino. Then he explains how Jasmine and Gino were flirting. Meanwhile, Jasmine's talking with Julia, and Julia tells her that Matt feels like he's no one to you. Jasmine's like, "He's the father of my baby." Julia says yes, but he wants to know that he's the father and your husband. Jasmine tells Julia that Matt's mom said if she can't be his wife, she has a good Romanian woman he can be with. Libby and Andre are talking with Guillermo and Darcy, and Guillermo asks what the timeline would be for them to move to Moldova. Andre says he wants to send his kids to school there now. Darcy says she moved a lot growing up, and every 2 years they'd move to a different country. I thought their dad left them behind with their mom while he traveled for work, but either way, Darcy didn't grow up the most stable person, so I'm sure that's not helping Libby feel more comfortable. Libby says, "So what about friends?" Darcy says she didn't have friends, and was always the new kid in school, but her sister was her friend. She says it might be better to move now than when the kids are older. Libby says they're young, and can't just be uprooted, and need predictability. Andre says, "Did you hear what Darcy said? She traveled all around the world, and she's great." Libby tells him, "You can't just decide things on a whim when you're talking about kids." Andre says she's speaking in circles, and if he's the problem, then get rid of him. And Libby's like, yeah. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, F around and you'll find out." And Darcy's looking around uncomfortably. Once Andre leaves, Darcy says to Libby, "Sorry, Mama." But Libby doesn't look at her, and just stares miserably into the distance. When they're on stage, Darcy asks Libby if she's okay, and she turns to her with a bit of venom and says, "No, she's not." Darcy keeps the same smile, because I don't think she has a lot of expressions. It's a little sad that now Libby has lost the only other friend she had in Darcy. Then Lauren whispers to Gino that she has something to tell him, and says Jasmine is still in love with him. He's like, "You think so?" This conversation is so middle school, you guys. Lauren says, "I know so," and everyone here sees it. She says, "Did Jasmine F up?" Yes. Is she in a bad situation now? Yes. But that she's still in love with him. Gino says, "This is shocking." Shaun announces it's the last day of the tell-all, and asks if anything significant happened at the house the night before. Jovi calls out Jasmine and Matt's fight, and Jasmine looks pissed. Matt explains that Jasmine says she never wants to get married again, and wants him to accept anything she gives him, but wants him to be committed. Jasmine says she's not sure where the expiration date thing came from, and was upset to hear about it in front of other people. Matt says now she's pissed at him, and last night she was flirting with Gino. She's like, "We were not flirting," but she's smiling a little as she says this. And Gino chimes in like, "Yeah, we weren't flirting," and he's also trying to hide his smile. Matt explains how, at one point during their discussion outside the mansion, Gino came out asking how Jasmine feels, and she was giggling and joking with him. At this point, Jasmine gives a smile to Gino, and now Gino is fully smiling. Shaun asks Matt if he thinks Jasmine can't let go of Gino. Matt says he thinks it's a mutual thing between them, and unless production edited it to look this way, Jasmine gives Gino another knowing smile. But Gino says this is probably the last time he'll see her. Then Yara says what we've all been thinking for years. She says, "Can we stop talking about this? I'm so tired of talking about Gino and Jasmine every day." She says she's even tired of hearing Gino's voice, and jokingly tells him to shut up already. Gino, also joking, says the feeling's mutual, and everyone's laughing, but for some reason, this seems to bother Libby. But I agree with Yara. Jasmine, Matt, and Gino already had their segment, so they shouldn't get more time at the tell-all, but I'm sure Jasmine was furious about Yara's comment. Shaun now moves on to the Florida Collective. Similar to Jasmine, Matt, and Gino, I feel like Shaun's covered the Florida Collective enough. I think they've now had 3 separate tell-all episodes dedicated to their interviews. I get that it's 3 couples, but it's too much. Shaun starts with Lauren and Alexi, and says Lauren and her mom had a falling out, and asks how things are now. Lauren says they're trying to repair things. Shaun asks her to explain what happened, but Lauren doesn't want to, saying it's too personal. Yara's like, "Well, you're already here, so you could share it," and Lauren looks annoyed. Shaun says Lauren and Alexi have been accused of deflecting and not talking about personal issues in their relationship, and she tries to ask Lauren about this. But Andre answers for her, "Absolutely." Lauren says she and Alexi have issues like any other couple, but they don't want to share everything. Libby says we're all here to share our stories, and if you're genuine, you need to talk about the hardships. Lauren starts to talk, and Libby interrupts saying, "You weigh in on our stuff all the time." Lauren responds, "And you don't weigh in on ours?" Shaun then moves on to Jovi and Yara. She says Jovi wanted to have another kid, and asks where they are with that today. Yara says she's considering it, but Jovi says for him that's just a maybe. Yara explains that for her to have a baby, Jovi would need to leave his current job because he's away so much, and says it was difficult for her to raise a child by herself, and that was just one kid. Shaun brings up a time at Lake Placid when Jovi mentioned Yara's looks. They show a clip where the couples were talking about how they looked when they were young, and Jovi tells everyone how Yara's pictures were the worst, and she was unrecognizable as a teenager compared to now. Yara is crying at reliving this experience and says Jovi knows better. She says she's very insecure about her appearance, and when she was young, she was even bullied by her own family. She explains that she tried therapy, but it's not helping, and she feels the trauma is stuck with her. The whole time she's weeping, Jovi's just looking at her with zero empathy. I felt really bad for her in this segment, and don't get why he couldn't comfort her just a little. I understand he didn't want to admit to any wrongdoing, even though he should, but he could have at least shown her a little comfort when she talked about being bullied by her family. Hi guys, just a reminder to please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks! Shaun now focuses on Andre and Elizabeth. She explains how they weren't on the same page about moving to Moldova, and they show footage of the couples talking about the potential trip. In the clip, Libby tells the girls she doesn't want to move there. Then they show a clip of Andre telling the guys he'll give Libby an ultimatum, and they can separate if she doesn't want to move there. Libby's watching the footage, shaking her head, and says, "So you did say that." Shaun asks how Libby feels about watching the footage where Andre is bragging about giving her an ultimatum. Libby says it's disrespectful, but it would be the other way around, because at this point she's told him if he wants to go, he can go on his own. Andre says in this relationship, he's wearing the pants. She tells him to go wear them in Moldova, and he says he certainly will. Shaun says the night Andre dropped the Moldova ultimatum was the same night Lauren's friend Noga visited. Andre's like, "Where is the dog? Where is she?" And Alexi tells him to stop calling her a dog. Shaun asks them to stop with the arguing, and she calls Noga on stage. Libby's like, "Wow, very ballsy of her to make an appearance here." Noga comes on stage, and Andre says, "Okay, you have 2 minutes." Lauren's like, "Are you the host?" Shaun calls a truce, and they show a clip of the events from the night of Lauren's dinner party. In the clip, they're talking about the idea of Libby and Andre moving to Moldova. Lauren was saying how when the mom is unhappy, her kids can't be happy. Andre said that's selfish thinking, and Noga came to Lauren's defense and told Andre off, and he told her off. In a confessional from the clip, Andre calls Noga Doga, and when the producer tries to correct him, he says she's Doga to him because she barks like a dog. At the tell-all stage, he again calls her Doga and says, "Doga, listen," and Lauren yells, "Her name is Noga." Shaun asks how Noga feels seeing Andre and Libby for the first time since the fight. Noga says she has nothing against Libby, but that Andre was twisting everything Lauren said. She stands by what she said, but says she has shame for raising her voice. Shaun asks Yara who was at fault. Yara says both share blame, but for Noga to start screaming at Andre when she doesn't know him was weird, which gets a big side glance from Lauren. Libby jumps on this and says to Lauren, "Why did you let her talk to him that way?" And Lauren says she had nothing to do with that, and can't control what other people do. Andre says Doga was barking at the command of Lauren. Noga says Andre doesn't deserve any respect, and Andre says Noga is disrespectful. Lauren's like, "You called her a dog." Kara says she's not sure if everyone's desensitized to how Andre talks down to people, and she's not sure if Libby's used to it, but it looks rough from her perspective. Libby says Kara has valid points, and she's over it, and she gets up and leaves the stage. Shaun asks Andre why Libby left. He says he's not sure and doesn't bother to get up and check, but instead tells Julia to check on her. He says, "Let's talk about Noga." Noga says if we can talk like humans, okay. He says to her, "Who unleashed you?" Backstage, Julia is trying to calm Libby down. In her interview, Libby says Andre is very passionate, and she didn't want to abandon him in that moment. She says Noga needs to realize what she did, since no woman wants to see their husband disrespected. I've seen posts on Reddit where people talk about how Libby just likes to say her husband, and that's the main reason she sticks by Andre, and I have to agree. She knows how he is, and he talks to her with the same disrespect as everyone else, but at the end of the day, that's her husband, and she's going to stick by him. Libby returns to the stage, and Shaun starts to ask her a question, but Libby cuts her off, saying to Noga, "First of all, where's your apology? If you truly feel bad, be a woman and apologize." Noga says she already apologized. Libby's really going off, saying, "Where do you get the audacity to say he's this or that? What kind of behavior is that for a woman?" And she and Andre demand that Noga apologize. It's clear that Libby is taking her huge ball of frustration for Andre out on Noga. Lauren says Noga did apologize. Andre says he wants an apology for how she speaks to them. Jasmine tells them to relax. Libby says sarcastically that it's refreshing to hear Jasmine say relax. Jasmine admits when she says that, it means a lot, and Gino nods and smiles. Shaun asks Noga what she'd like to say. Noga says her behavior was inappropriate, but what she said had meaning because Andre wasn't nice. Shaun thanks Noga and excuses her. And for once, Matt doesn't yell something out when a special guest leaves the stage. Shaun then excuses everyone for a break. As the couples disperse, Lauren's muttering about how disgusting Andre and Libby are. She finds Noga and tells her she's sorry, and they hug. In her backstage confessional, Noga says she was willing to apologize, but after what she experienced, Andre doesn't deserve anything. She thinks Libby is embarrassed by how her husband behaves, and that she'd rather defend his behavior than deal with telling him the truth. Preach, Noga! Anyway, that's it for this half of part 4 of the tell-all. In my next video, which should come out in another day or so, I'll cover the tell-all finale. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.